Yami is the perfect mentor character. At least that's how he seems after the new fall batch of chapters. Not only did these chapters reunite him with his sister and give him a cool new form, but they also reminded us why Yami is one of the most inspiring characters in the story. Incidentally, these chapters also serve to prove why the Black Clover ending will probably end up better than My Hero Academia's, but that's a video for another time. For now, I'd like to examine Yami's growth in these new chapters, discuss how it highlights everything great about his character, and explain why Yami is one of manga's all-time best mentor characters. And in case it isn't obvious, this video will contain major spoilers. First off, we gotta talk about Yami's new demon god form. If you recall, this was the pill that led to the destruction of Yami's family, causing his sister Ichika to hate him and forcing Yami to take the blame and run away to the Clover Kingdom. But fast forward to these new chapters, and Ryu instructs Ichika to give the exact same pill to Yami. Now, I won't lie, it's far from the best transformation in Black Clover. It certainly doesn't compare to some of Nox's forms or even Asta's Devil Union, but it's definitely better than some people are saying. Personally, I like how the horns kind of make him look like Dante. Plus, the white highlights in his hair are suspiciously similar to Dai's Ryu Majin form from Dragon Quest. But more importantly, what's great about this scene is that it serves as another example of Yami taking on the burden of those around him. In this case, Ichika was feeling guilty for hating Yami for all those years and effectively forcing him to run away from home. But in this scene, not only does he take on her guilt, but he also protects her unlike he could before in a way where now he can still be there for his sister. This is a perfect example of why Yami is such a great mentor character. Obviously, when you think mentor, you think someone who teaches, but clearly there's more to it than that. With mentor characters, what makes them feel special is when they visibly improve the lives of the people they're mentoring. So for example, say what you will about Piccolo, but he literally saves Gohan's life in the Saiyan saga, and is constantly going out of his way to help him. You also have someone like Toki in Gintama, who isn't always teaching Shinpachi or Kagura, but he always goes out of his way to shoulder their burdens and make them his own, whether it's Shinpachi's family issues or Kagura's overwhelming past. And this is something you see Yami do again and again. In fact, he does it so often that it's practically a meme. He saves Charlotte, he saves Vanessa, he saves just about everyone in the Black Bulls, basically. But beyond just saving people, Yami has a way of just taking people's problems, their doubts, their insecurities, and making them his own. Now, that's just one way these chapters remind us why Yami is such a great mentor, but there's at least two other ways. One example is how he inspires the other characters, but we'll talk about that later in the video. Another example is how his arc is practically identical to Asta's. Because of this, the two characters build off of each other in a way that makes their dynamic one of the best in all of manga. But before I explain how that works, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. So when I was reading this chapter, I got to this panel where Yami had the big X-shaped scar on his chest, and I was like, you know, this kind of reminds me of Asta for some reason. I know this is really Luffy's thing, but still, I was like, why does this feel like Asta? And then he transforms into his demon god form, and it looks so much like Asta's Devil Union. They each have their big devil horns, they both have the wristband thing going on. Asta has the crest on his chest, while Yami is rocking the X-shaped scar. Granted, Asta obviously has more going on in his design, but the fact that Yami's is so similar reminds us how much these two characters have in common, which is another reason Yami is such a great mentor. To be clear, I don't know about anyone else, but I always think of teacher and mentor as two distinct things. A teacher is someone who is literally teaching you a lesson, so more like a sensei like Master Roshi or Jiraiya. A mentor is someone who does teach, but it's less about coming to them for lessons and more about coming to them for advice. Senku in Dr. Stone, for example, teaches Chrome a lot, but when you look at the role he plays in Chrome's life and how he gives him a lot of advice instead of explicitly explaining everything, Senku is clearly more of a mentor. He's able to give Chrome advice because he's been in Chrome's shoes already and they're so similar. In this sense, it's not crazy to think of Senku as a big brother to Chrome. And this is even more true for a character like Yami. First of all, Yami and Asta both have very similar backgrounds. Asta grew up on the literal margin of society, grew up poor and without magic. And once he did get magic, he always had to prove himself to everyone else. Yami grew up in a dark clan, was effectively exiled from that clan and his home, and when he got to the Clover Kingdom, he was a foreigner that people were quick to judge until he was finally able to prove himself to everyone. So, like a brother, Yami grew up in a background similar to Asta's, meaning he has a lot of the same values and therefore knows how to push Asta without explaining exactly what he needs to do, which makes him the perfect mentor. And of course, there's only a million other parallels between the two characters. In these chapters, Yami has scars just like Asta does, their transformations are similar, they're both beefy characters, they're both brothers in their respective families, they're both oblivious to their would-be romantic partners, etc., etc. The point is, Yami has so much in common with Asta that even though he's older and has more experience, he feels less like a teacher and more like an older brother, which makes him an amazing mentor, not only because this shared experience lets him advise Asta, but also because it creates this chemistry where it always feels like these characters are working together. It's this mutual growth where the characters are already similar to begin with, but as they grow, they each become more like the other, growing even closer as a result. Which gets into the other way these chapters show us how Yami is such a great mentor. In the battle against Morgan, Ichika approaches Noct in his time of doubt. She speaks to how she met Asta and how she's learned that Yami is always inspiring those around him. In this case, even when Yami was growing by fighting to protect Ichika and be there for her, Ichika is compelled to fight alongside her brother so that he doesn't have to fight alone this time. This is another example of how Yami is always inspiring the other characters, especially the members of the Black Bulls. He inspires Magna to get stronger, Vanessa to be free, and of course, he's always inspiring Asta and Noelle with his iconic catchphrase, "Go beyond your limits." Part of the magic of this catchphrase is that it shows how Yami always knows exactly what to say to each individual character. For someone like Asta, who is a straightforward meathead, Yami knows to tell Asta to realize what his limits are and then find a way to go beyond them. In this case, with a character like Noct, who doubts himself because he feels guilty for dragging down his brother, Yami instead tells him the following. First, he says, "Are you planning to let Morgan kill people?" Right away, this shows how well Yami knows Noct. Noct views his brother as this perfect source of good and light, so he feels ashamed of having dragged him down and doesn't want to do it again. So by suggesting that doing nothing will actually ruin his brother's legacy, Yami hits the nail right on the head and directs Noct's doubts in a constructive manner. But then he points out how Noct feels overwhelmed because he has to carry this burden alone, which is why he vows to stand side by side with Noct and fight Morgan together. This scene is genius because it shows everything about why Yami is such a brilliant mentor. He takes on Noct's burden, he shows how he knows what he's going through because he knew Morgan just as well as Noct did. He inspires Noct to overcome his insecurity, and he points out that insecurity so that Noct can move on. But most importantly, Yami promises to carry this burden and fight with Noct. Probably the most special aspect of Yami's role as a mentor in Black Clover is that he's always fighting alongside the people who look up to him. He fights alongside Asta the first time they fight Licht. He fights side by side with Asta against Dante in a moment where he admits that he needs Asta and looks up to him, cementing it as one of the best moments in Black Clover. And here, he vows to fight side by side with Noct. rather than push Noct to fight alone or fight his battle for him. What this shows is that Yami never asks anyone to do something that he himself couldn't do. He tells Asta to go beyond his limits because that's something that he's always doing. He grows just as much as Asta does, as we can see Yami learning new moves and new ways to use those moves again and again. And here, when he's asking Noct to overcome his trauma and self-doubt, this is at a time when Yami is doing the exact same thing. Yami had to suffer the tragedy of his family's death and the abandonment of his own sister for years. And now that she's back and he has a chance to prove how much he's gotten stronger, this fight serves as an opportunity for Yami to grow as a character by showing how he can protect the people he cares about while being strong enough to keep them in his life rather than push him away like he has in the past. The only reason he can ask Noct to grow beyond his trauma is because he is doing the same thing, which is exactly why Yami is the perfect mentor. He shoulders the burdens of the people he cares about, saving everyone to the point of it being a meme. He grows together and shares experiences with those characters in a way that makes him feel less like a teacher and more like a big brother. He knows exactly what to say to motivate someone on a personal level. He only asks someone to do something if he's willing to do the same thing. And of course, he's one of the most inspirational characters in the manga. Reading these new chapters has shown just how in character a lot of these kinds of moments are in this final arc, which is why this arc might end up being one of the best endings of any recent manga. But more than anything else, these chapters remind us exactly why Yami will always be one of the best mentors in all of anime and manga. But now I'd like to hear what you think. How would you rate the new chapters? How did you like Yami's recent fight? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like to join me for another discussion like this one, then make sure to check out my live streams every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. In those live streams, I react to new manga chapters like these, as well as discuss other anime and manga topics. And if you'd like more Black Clover videos like this one, then make sure to check out the Black Clover playlist linked right here. For now, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.